Florida man has both a love for drag racing and making a difference. Differences that change the lives of many. For David Pike Jr., with the help of friends and family, he does it all through the charity program Drag Race for a Cure. Drag Race for a Cure began in the year 2015 when David Pike got together with his friends to raise money for the local Cystic Fibrosis Foundation at Orlando Speed World Dragway.
My daughter was born in 1996. In 1990, about a year later, about 13 months later, we found out she had cystic fibrosis. So when you first find out about a child or a family member that get terminal illness, you're like really gung-ho to like raise money and this and that. So we did, me and my ex-wife, we did like golf tournaments, bowling events, beach walks and stuff like that. And all that stuff was like fun, but it really wasn't my cup of tea. You know what I mean? We were there to support.
Cystic fibrosis is a genetic disorder that affects the lungs, pancreas, and other organs, which can last for years or be lifelong. Close to 40,000 people in the U.S. have cystic fibrosis, a rare genetic disease according to the official website of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
And then I think it was about 2014. I started thinking. Well, before that, it happened like years before. I would say like 2008 or 9. I was always wondering, can I do a charity event by drag racing? And I never really said anything. I just kind of threw it in the back burner. And I always wondered what could I do. So I approached a friend. I asked a friend one day. His name's Larry Hutchinson. He used to drive a big tire Camaro out of Orlando. He did a lot of heads-up racing. And I've been more of the bracket index type racing. And I asked him, I was like, man, I've always had this like dream to do a charity event called, I didn't even know what it was called. I just wanted a drag race for charity. And I really didn't care what we raised. It was more about the awareness.
His own daughter battles CF and had discovered a young girl near his daughter's age passed away from CF. Her name was Kayla James, a two-time junior dragster track champion at Immokalee Dragway. She was only 17 years old.
I was out here at Bradenton Motorsports Park. I was racing, and another fellow racer, he lives in St. Pete, but his mom lives down in Fort Myers. And she approached me. I was in the staging lanes one time. I was probably about 5 or 6 sets back, and she says, "Hey, have you ever heard of this girl named Kayla James?" And I'm like, she said she has cystic fibrosis, and she races a junior dragster. And I'm like, no, I never heard of her, you know. She showed me a picture of her car, and I said, well, she goes, you should reach out to her mom and dad. And I said, I will, you know, she's racing out here. Her track was Immokalee. So I would say about maybe 4 or 5 months later, I was almost in the exact same spot. And I always like to drive in the left-hand lane. That's my lane. I'm always in the left-hand lane. And she came up to me and she says, Kayla's not doing good. So, long story short, she ended up passing away of cystic fibrosis. And her favorite color was lime green. She literally looked like if you saw a picture of her, she looked a lot like she could be my own daughter. Like she looked like, not an identical twin, but she looked like a sister to my daughter. And that's really what pushed me to the extreme. So again, I didn't care how we got there. I contacted the track that was her home track, and and I asked her, and I waited a few months to let things die down, settle down after her death. I said, are you guys going to do anything to benefit cystic fibrosis, in her memory? All I wanted to do was get the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation involved in this. Like if we raise $250 or $500 and put it in her name, at least it's something in memory that something she passed away from and doing something she loved. You know what I mean? So they told me, yeah, we're going to do something. Well, they never did. And that got me real bitter. So that's when I approached my friend Larry in Orlando. And I said, what do you think about, I told him the whole spiel. He's like, I think you should do it. So back then I was running no prep. It was called Florida Top 10. It was a no prep racing in the Duster. And I approached the guy that did it, and he's like, sure, let's do it. And then he goes, get permission from the track owner, you know what I mean, Ozzy Moya, and Wade Rich was the track manager. So I talked to them, and they were like, cool, that's fine. But then they saw how big it was getting, and they're like, let's do it. Let's just do a whole day of it. Because the Florida Top 10 was just maybe 50 people, 40, 50 cars. He's like, let's grow it and try to do something big. This was before I even had my race. So anyways, we had our race. It was like March 15th or 16th. And it was actually a week after Kayla's death, a year anniversary. She died in 2014. It was like a week, within the time frame. It was so her parents came, but we ended up raising, I think it was like $9,500 for the first event, that was pretty good. We had like 250 or 260 tech cards for our first event, and that was a really good event. So then on the off season, I really wasn't I just wanted to get it off my chest. I was I just didn't want to, it's not that I didn't want to put the effort, like I said, I was so bitter towards the other track. I was like, I just wanted to prove to myself I could do it. I did it all on my own. And then I had racers asking me, are you going to do that again? Because we didn't have anything like that down here in Florida.
The event has since been relocated to Bradenton Motorsport Park. For as long as David Pike can remember, he had always had a love for drag racing, not just for a love for cars.
My father taking me out to Bradenton. I was born in 1971. I've been going to our biggest race down here called the Snowbirds. I went there when I started going in 1976. I was like five years old, 6 years old. And then once I got like a young teen, I would say not a teenager, like 11, 12 years old. My dad, a good friend of my dad's from high school, his name's Fred Miller. He was part of the Raymond Beadle Blue Max crew. He was a crew member, and we'd go to Gainesville every single year. And so I would say my biggest influence in drag racing, other than my father, would be Raymond Beadle from Blue Max. He's won a number of championships in Top Fuel Funny Car. He's since passed, but he's the one that kind of influenced me as someone I looked up to. He's he's of the caliber of like Kenny Bernstein, Don Perdone, John Force. John Force raced back then with him. But I would say Raymond Beadle was probably my biggest influence as far as wanting to get a race car.
In the mid-2000s, Pike purchased a 1973 Plymouth Duster dragster online from a private seller in Michigan. With help from a friend to transport the car to his home in Parrish, while working at public supermarkets at the time, the Duster arrived at Pike's collector car stable. With work being done on the car, it would then be discovered that near the rear of the Duster was an orange line with an insignia that said, "Owned by Grant Grebeck." And it was here that David Pike discovered that this was no ordinary Plymouth Duster dragster. It was a Duster that once belonged to a well-known drag racing family, once driven by the late Steve Grabeck.
That was back I bought this in like 2005, 2006, somewhere into there, 2005. No, I bought the car from someone else, and I sent a friend of mine to go pick it up. But once I found out the name of whose car it was, like, I didn't know that it was his actual car, because my wife looked up when we found the name. I was like, damn, that name sounds familiar. So we both Googled it, and it came up Steve Grabeck. So she found that article where he drove a 71 Demon. So I was thinking maybe the fiberglass deck lid was from his car that they put on. You know what I mean? But I ended up calling Mike Moran, was a good friend of his. He's a big engine builder in Michigan. I called him, and Donnie Walsh Jr., he races like NMCA. He runs Pro Mod. He was really good friends with Steve, and if you see on the side of on the passenger side, it says Steve Grabeck, co-pilot. But I talked to Mike Moran, and Mike Moran's like, you got his car. That's like his car, that's his very first car he ever owned. And he put me in contact with his brother Randy. His brother Randy, I talked to him a couple of times a year. Steve Grabeck was in the heads up in like mid-90s, late mid-90s, early 2000s. He was like the legend in heads up racing, along with like Mike Hill, Tony Christian, Pat Busey, all those guys. But he was younger. But we ended up finding I got a wing, a DRC wing built for the car, and a friend of mine, racer Keith Hart, built the wing for it. Well, it had like a plastic fiberglass, I would call it plastic spoiler on the back. And when we painted the car, we just painted the whole car. And he took that off, and it was orange underneath. It said owned by Grant Grabeck. So long story short, it was a long story, but it ended up being Steve Grabeck's very first car. It was his stepmom's car. She didn't like it, and him and his dad built it in their garage, and it wasn't tubbed. But then his parents went on vacation. His parents went on vacation for like a couple weeks, and they came back, and it was back half. It was tubbed. So he's like 16 years old.
Recognizing the car's insignia, David Pike decided to keep it.
I painted it green because that's my dad used to have I have the AAR. My dad had a TA Challenger, and my dad's was that color. So I love the color, so that's why I painted it.
Under Pike's ownership, the Duster competed in the Pink's All Out drag race event.
Pink's All Out was my very first quarter-mile race with this car. That was over in West Palm Beach. Good to see plumbers and electricians actually like race, you know, instead of these well-known people on TV. It's good to see the everyday working man. You know, they work all week to go race on the weekend.
Over the course of time, the Duster became the face of Drag Race for a Cure.
It's really not a star car. It's one of the cars it's my car, and the very first pass in DRC history, I had her parents were there, Kayla James' parents. I got a picture blown up, and I taped it to the side of the window, and I wanted to take her for a ride. You know, it was like kind of like I won't say her last ride, but maybe her first new ride. Because again, this race was about her. It was started because of her. I wanted to try to keep that memory going. And come to find out, I didn't know any of this stuff. But that I did that in the right-hand lane at Orlando. And after I found out about the car being Steve Grabeck's, he actually lost his life in that lane at Orlando. That's when it was in the 2000s, early 2000s. He wrecked, and that was a brutal wreck. Technology's changed so much, you know, over the years. I mean, the cars are getting faster. You know, you could even go back in my time of high school. like a 12-second car on the street, but that was a fast car. Now they're like, you know, 8s and 9s on the street. It's like totally like my Cuda, it was pretty quick for the street. It ran like 14 flat. But technology's changed so much and cars have gotten faster, but they've also gotten safer. You know what I mean? I'm big on safety. I can't stand seeing, you know, it's their life, but I hate seeing people that their cars are capable of running a certain number and they're not properly safety equipped. It's the car, but it's also the person, you know? These guys running like 4s and 5s on nitrous in the 8th mile with no gloves on or no neck brace on. You can never be over safety. I'd rather be overboard than not. So I take safety very serious.
For many in the drag racing community, generosity is a commonality among fellow competitors when difficult times call for devotion to the welfare of others, especially when both time and money comes up short in the entry to compete. For all who come, see DRC as the heart of drag racing, or the grassroots side of it, because it is the people that make the difference.
Scott Finley he drives my car at my race because I'll never promote a race and drive my own car. Although I will drive, I just not at my own race. Well, long story short, we're heading into our ninth year, and so what we do now after my first year, I don't want to be a selfish person and just be like all about cystic fibrosis. So we take and do a different charity each year. We add, CF is always one. We've done multiple sclerosis, St. Jude's Hospital, Make-A-Wish Foundation, juvenile diabetes. We've done another foundation called Right to Breathe. It's Joe Morrison. He's a top fuel driver. He was in charge of that foundation, so we just teamed up. And then I get therapy machines. I wish I had brought one. I got one in the garage that we donate to people all across the world. We've donated like 32 machines. We donate them to families that don't have health insurance because they're about $20,000 pop. And we get those through local hospitals that families that their children or the adults pass away of it, and they give them to us. And it's been a while since I've done one, but I've shipped them to, I think it was Kazakhstan, England. I sent one to, my first one went to Chile, that I donated to a little boy. His name was Benjamin. He was about 6 or 7. But, and then actually the Chilean government got involved, and it was the very first machine in the country, and they did a whole documentary on how the family got in contact with me and kind of what we do. So there's a lot of unhidden stuff that we've done that no one really sees. They might hear about it, but they don't really see it. You know? So my first 3 years were at Orlando, and then I went to West Palm Beach for 2 years, and I've been at Bradenton for, this will be my, so 3, 4, 5, this will be my 4th year at Bradenton. Third or fourth year. So, and all the tracks have been great. Unfortunately, Palm Beach closed down, but I always wanted to have this race at my home track, Bradenton. So. It's different because it is a charity event. I mean, it's a tax write-off for all the sponsors, and I'll go over my sponsors. I got some awesome sponsors. Just a couple of them have been with me since day one. But I had, at times I wanted it to like be really, really big, and then you realize it's not the work, but the bigger it is, sometimes the less effective. So we try to keep it compact. We base it around bracket, any type of index racing, stuff like that, just because I've learned over the years that, and I'm not knocking the heads up guys, but they're wanting big payouts. Bracket guys have more of a family, and I'm talking about overall feel. It's more about what they're racing for a cause. You know what I'm saying? We've had a number of, and we don't expect it from anybody. We've had a number of people donate back their wins. That's not why we do the race. We do the race to bring awareness. We do the race because we all love drag racing. You know? The tracks have been phenomenal. Every single track. So the deal is with the tracks that we do it at is they basically open their doors to us. We handle everything as far as we sell t-shirts and stuff like that, but they handle everything. Like whatever money we take from t-shirt sales and hat sales, we give it to them. They handle all the money part as far as for the tax write-off. That's what they get out of it. They get a tax write-off. Now they take their cost of paying their employees, which that's common sense. But whatever profit is, they donate. So basically, we're putting on the event, but it's actually the track that donates the money. To see the after effect of what money you raise, I mean, I don't think we've raised less than $5,000 each race, which it's more 12 to the $18,000 range that we raise. We had last year was a little down year because we had the hurricane. So I was actually going to cancel the race, and what we did was, instead of giving it to the charity, because I didn't want people to think that they were coming out to a race for two charities when we got all this stuff going on in Florida. So what we did is we raced for the drag racers that were affected by the storm. So they were able to give money. It was all anonymous. The track knows who they are. I don't even know who they are, but if they needed to help money to pay their light bill or to help with a roof or whatever, the little bit goes a long way. So that's where it's kind of been. But we're looking forward to this year, getting back at it here pretty soon.
Drag Race for a Cure continues to hold events and remains seekers of future sponsorship and donations.
If you're a company, you can just reach out to me through Facebook, or you can put my number, David W. Pike Jr., 941-822-3396. They can reach out to me. But if it's just an individual that wants to send money, I usually have them just send the money to the CF Foundation and put in DRC on it. I've never wanted that impression that I touch all the money, because I don't. It's the same thing if you go into if you're in high school and you have a backpack and you go into 7-Eleven and you walk out with a backpack. It's about perception. I don't want any part of that. So if you're thinking about donating money towards DRC, if you're not a business, just write a check to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, your local branch. We have a Facebook page called Drag Race for a Cure. You can get on I have a YouTube channel. I started to bring awareness to a few things, more so Drag Race for a Cure. And then also our local track. Bradenton MOTORSPORTS Park is honestly, it's been rated the best track in the country, I think, a couple years in a row through Drag Illustrated and some other stuff. I mean, we have this awesome facility right in our backyard. The benefit to that is not only the best track, we got the best track prep guy in the country, Wade Rich. We have an awesome owner, Victor Alvarez, who they're both phenomenal. And we do, that's the benefit of living in Florida. You can race pretty much all year long. I don't see how people do it in the summer, but at least the track's open. You know, some of these people, I was just online the other day, and I seen some of these people that live up north that are just now getting ready to get started. We've been racing, you know. I look at, we have basically like 2 seasons down here. We got spring, part of the winter to spring. Once the summer starts, there's still people racing. But then during the summer, it rains so much. And it's too hot. And then we start back up around like say September, the end of September through. The track's open like 2 days before Christmas.
With the help of Drag Race for Cure, as a licensed affiliate of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the goal has always remained the same: raise awareness and proceeds for a cure through drag racing.
It'll probably be November 3rd and 4th is what I'm guessing. That's not finalized, but I'll be getting back in contact with. I usually let the season, all the racing go. You know, summertime it's slower, so I'll have a date and then I'll start promoting it. I'll put it on the page, on my Facebook page, my personal page, and the DR Drag Race for Cure page. I wasn't able to do it last year because of the hurricane, and like I said, I was thinking about canceling the race. But I'm gonna carry Lyle Barnett, is a NHRA Pro Mod driver. He almost lost his life in 2014, I believe, at the big radio race up in Georgia. His car caught fire. You can follow him on Facebook, YouTube. It's a very inspiring story. He basically got his whole. He was on fire in a car for like 33 seconds or something, like, which 33 seconds or whatever the time. I know it's in that ballpark, but that feels like 10, 15 minutes. When you got fire, so he's got all kinds of burn marks on him. But just by hearing him talk, you know, I've known Lyle a while, but I was at Bradenton I don't know, was it last year and a half ago, and we were able to sit down and talk, and just to see the emotions and hear it in his voice and see it in his eyes. He's very passionate about the JMS Burn Center in Augusta, Georgia. He basically said they saved his life, so he's he started crying, teary-eyed. I got teary-eyed. It was like the first time that I actually talked to someone about DRC that was passionate about something like I am. He was almost more passionate. So we're doing that this year. We're going to do the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and the JMS Burn Center in Augusta, Georgia.